Hey you awesome people, welcome to my channel. This is Sapta and today I'm going to teach you how to make this. Now this is an e-commerce app for buying sneakers. Is this the best app that can be designed for buying sneakers? Not sure. Does it have the best UX? Not sure again. But this certainly is a great candidate for teaching motion design, and that's exactly what we are going to do today. And if you stay till the end, I will also teach you how to make your first fancy dribble shot. So stay tuned. Here's the UI where the cards move from the right to the left side, and along with that the shoes also move and they also rotate a bit. You see, the same thing is happening to every card, the red one, the next one which is the yellow one, and to the blue one. This is another classic example of multiple simple things used together to make something look complicated. It's very simple, nothing new that you do not know already. If you want to check out the basics, I highly recommend you check out the episode 1 and 2 of the same series where I have explained all the basics. Here's a UI that I have made for explaining the same. And now this is inspired by the hundreds and thousands of similar UI involving Nike shoes and parallel scroll that I have seen over Dribbble made by designers all over the world. So this is just bits and pieces of the memories of all the things that I have seen. It's very simple. These are the different stages. As the scroll happens, there's one card which is in focus and the other one which is just appears from the edge, the next one. And when the next appears, the one after that comes and sits at the edges, so on and so forth. So in our animation, we are expanding the blue card. So which means I don't have to put anything, I don't have to worry about the green card at all. I mean, this shoe that you're seeing here, if you just push it behind it, it's probably won't even be seen. So this is the expanded state where this card morphs into this big circle and the shoes goes and sits at the top. That's pretty much it, and here are the assets that I have built. Once again, the UI home doesn't change. It can remain as one single image with, of course, a blank space, a blank window for the cards. The cards are all separated out and so are the shoes. We don't need the green shoe, like I've said, that it's never going to come into our vision. The edge of this green card is the max that we are going to see. This is the UI details page. Of course, the top part is blank because that's where we'll fill it up in After Effects while we animate. And this is the blue card. It seems white because it's a transparent card. Now I have the fill here, but I have set the opacity to 0, only the fill, that is the blue background color, because I don't need the color here. Since in the animation this card, it grows and becomes a circle, I cannot do it if I export this blue thing as an image. So what I have done is the background, I have just kept the opacity as 0, and the only thing that I'm going to export are the white text and this, this faint line, right? So that this will be a transparent image. And these images of shoes, I have downloaded them from the official website of Nike, and I have used the pen tool in Photoshop to remove the background by drawing an outline. I do not own the copyright of these photos. They belong to Nike India. So let's get started. Here we are in After Effects, and as a first thing, I will import all the files that I've exported from Figma, the assets which I had shown you before. So I'll double click on the project panel, and I will navigate to where my image assets are. Here they are. I will select all these files and I'll click open. I'll have all the files inside, and just for the sake of organization, since there are so many files, maybe we can also put them inside a folder because you can create folders inside project panels. So for that, I will select all of them and drag them over this small folder icon. And when I do that, it creates a folder with all the contents inside. I will name it as image assets. And all your assets are going to be inside. Done. Next step, we will create a composition. Let's go ahead and create a new composition, and the dimensions would be 1080 by 2400. Again, it's one of those long, high-end Android phones. The frame rate would be 60 because that's what I prefer for UI animations. Resolution doesn't quite matter because this resolution is just a resolution of the preview that you are going to see when you're working. You can keep it full, you can keep it quarter, anything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the final quality. I'll keep it quarter because it's a little less intensive on my machine, which is already slightly older. And duration, I'll keep it 10 seconds, although it's going to be shorter than that, but we'll just keep it 10. And background color, once again, doesn't matter because we will use some other way of showing the background. And of course, I'll give it a name. I'll call it mobile main parallax. I go ahead and click OK, and I have the composition right in front of me. So it's also open. So the first step, I want a white background for it. And for that, I will use the rectangle tool. I'll click on the rectangle tool, and it has a default fill of blue. I'll just make it white for now and double click on it. When I double click, it creates a rectangle which is exactly of the size of the composition, which in our case is the mobile frame. So this is the new layer which is from shape layer 1. I will rename it to background white. Now when you're working, when there will be many other layers above it, it's highly likely that, while we're trying to move something, this may get moved, and you don't want that because this is going to remain like this. So what we will do is we'll select this and lock it by clicking on the small icon here. So when you do it, it just gets locked and you don't move anything else. Now let's quickly import the assets or pull in the assets in our composition. The first one being UI home. That's the most important one. And we will drag it and put it right above the background white like this. I'll zoom it in a bit. And here we are going to place all the cards along with the shoes. Let's just place them and then we'll see how we'll animate them, right? So first is the red shoe and the red card. I will drag them and put them above the UI home. Of course, the shoe needs to be above the card. And we will place them, just roughly, we'll just place them maybe here. And the shoe can be here, and while it's in the first frame like this, but it's in the active frame, the rotation is minus 30 degrees because that's how I would want them to. So I will just quickly set the rotation value. I'll click R on the keyboard and I will see the rotation here. I'll not add a keyframe right away because I'm not animating it. I'm just statically changing the position. I will change the rotation value to minus 30. Yep. And yeah, I think a little bit protruding out of the card looks good enough. And maybe the card can come a little inside, just tad bit inside this all tabs that you see here. Right, I think this looks good. Now let's quickly bring the other elements as well. So this is the red card and the red shoe. And the red card will also have some position elements to it. When I tap P on the keyboard, it says it's 444 by 1036. This is something, these numbers we can use as a reference when we are aligning the other cards above it, just so that it's exactly in the same place and not somewhere else. So after red, it's the yellow. So let's bring the yellow card and the yellow shoe, select both of them, drag and drop them right above this. And of course, the yellow shoe needs to be above the card. There it is. And I want to place this card right exactly at the place where my red card is. So this I've done by eye estimation, and to make it precise, I can always pick these values, So I expand the position of yellow card, and this was 444. I can give it an X value of 444 and 1036. I did a fairly good job at using eye estimation. And this is the yellow shoe. I will rotate it to minus 30 degrees. Same like the red shoe, and you see this is the edge of the red shoe which is still visible. I will kind of place it around the same place. Okay, next I'll do the same thing for the blue shoes as well. There's my blue card and blue shoe, but there is one difference here. If you remember, the blue card is a transparent one, but it still has the same dimensions as a full card, so I can always go ahead and position it like the way it is. So I'll change the position of the blue card to 444 and 1036, just like every other card. And I'll also change the rotation value of the blue card to minus 30, just like every other shoe. And I'll also kind of align it with the remaining shoes. Now, there's one more thing that we need to do here. Now, we know that the blue card was a transparent one, but we need a blue fill to it. And to do that, we need to create a blue shape, which is of the same size as the other cards that you see here. Right, so we'll do that using the rectangle tool. I'll click on the rectangle tool and I will create a rectangle which is roughly the size of the every other card. I will use the yellow card which is right beneath as my reference, and this is a card which is roughly the size of the ones. And to make it precise, I will go back to Figma and I will check the size of any of these cards. So these are 256 by 304 with a corner radius of 16. And these were all made for 1x, that is the width of the screen is 360. And if you remember, the width of our screen is 1080, which is 3 times these. So all the assets are also exported in 3x, that is 3 times the size. So we'll have to do the same for this card as well. That is 3 times of 256, 304 and 16. Let's do it in After Effects. So here's our card, and I will set the dimensions by going inside rectangle, contents, rectangle 1, rectangle path and size. First and foremost, I'll remove this constraint proportions link that you see here. So now it is unconstrained. I can resize it the way I want. And the width was 256 into 3. I don't have to do the math in my head because After Effects can do it. 256 into 3. If I do this and press enter, it's going to give me the value. Similarly, 304 into 3 is going to bring the exact dimension, and same with roundedness. 16 into 3 is 48, and this is exactly my card. Now I need to get the hex code of the blue color, which I'll again get from Figma. I'll quickly switch to Figma, and that's the blue color. This is the hex. I will copy it. I'll go back to After Effects, select the card, click on this fill and paste the hex code. So this is my blue card, or let's call it blue shape, right? Because we already have something as blue card. So this shape is the one which is going to morph from this rectangle to the circular form and sit at the top as the header of the details page. And I will put it right under the blue card so that it's the blue shape followed by the blue card and the blue shoe. We will also set precise position for this blue shape that we have just created. So I'll click on position. If you remember, it was 444 by 1036. Yeah, I remember the values. If you forget, you can always check any of the other cards and you just need to match it up so that we are sure all of them are aligned. So these are all our cards stacked one above another. Now we just have to prepare the UI for the animation, right? In the first stage, we know that the red card and the red shoe remains here and everything else remains to the right side of it, which has not been scrolled yet. So we will leave the red ones and move everything else towards the right. So, this is how much I would want the next card to show up, just a little bit of the text and the line maybe. And now this is where I want the yellow card to stay because that's the second set. So I will deselect yellow card and the yellow shoe and I will move the remaining to somewhere here. Roughly, so you can see the outlines roughly the same space. It doesn't quite matter because you can change these while you're animating. Now if you don't see these outlines which are here, then you can activate them by going to view and click on show layer control. So if this is turned off, you won't see them. So like whenever you select, it won't show anything on the composition. But I prefer having them on, so go to view and show layer control and you will see all of them. And even when you select them, you will see this outline. So it kind of gives me the feedback. I like having it. Now there's one more card that we need to bring in, which is the green one. It doesn't need to have a shoe because like I said, that's never going to come into the vision. The best that you will get to see the green card is this edge. So I will bring that regardless. So I'll just pull and drag it here. It's also going to have the same position, which was 444 by 1036, if you remember. Yep, here it is. And this would be all the way to the end in the initial frame because we are preparing for the initial play. So I will drag it. I can hold shift while I'm dragging it so that it moves along one horizontal line, and I will roughly place it somewhere here. Our UI is now prepared for animation. We have all of them here. The red, yellow, blue, and the green card as well. Let's quickly go ahead and animate. So one simple thing that is certainly happening is position. All of them are moving from the right to left. So let's do it. I don't want the animation to start right away from 0 seconds. So I want it to start after around 40 frames. So I need to move this handle to 40th frame, and there's a keyboard shortcut for that. Press and hold Command and Shift and press the right keyboard button 4 times. So this is at the 40th frame position. Now this is where I would want the position animation, and I'm going to do it for all of them together. all of them. So that is the red card, shoe, yellow card, shoe, blue shape, blue card, blue shoe, and the green card. So the shortcut for, while all of these are selected, I will press P on the keyboard, which is a shortcut for position. Click on any of these stopwatches. This will add a keyframe for all of them because all of them are selected. Now I'll move 30 frames ahead. Command Shift and the right keyboard button 3 times. So I come here. I want to add one more set of keyframes for all of them. You see it got added to all of them. And now we need to move. So I need to move in such a way so that this yellow one is kind of around the same place where the red one is right now, right? So I will move all of them. If you see, I'm moving all of them together. Now we are using a very simple technique of animation in this one. So, we are just using eye estimation. There are more sophisticated and complicated techniques which I do not wish to introduce at this point of time. Maybe, in subsequent episodes, I will tell you how to animate so that they're exactly in the same position. So for now, I think eye estimation is good enough. I think this is pretty much where the red one was there. And I will make some individual changes as well. So I deselect all of them since all of them are selected. I will just select the red ones which have just gone out. I will push them further away a little more. I think this looks good enough here. Now I'll select all of them once again because I'm going to move to the next position. So the next 40 frames is going to be a pause. So I'll move 1, 2, 3, 4, 40 frames ahead. And this is going to be a pause. I don't want to put any changes here. I don't want to make any changes here. So what I will do is I will just click on this and it'll add one set of the same keyframes. I'm not going to change anything here. Now I'll move 30 frames ahead once again. Command Shift and the right keyboard 1, 2, and 3 times. So now here. Now I want the blue to come and sit here and the yellow to move out of the frame. So while all of them are selected, I will move them to the right so as to align the blue card roughly along the same place where our yellow card was before. Yeah, I think this is good enough. And I'll also make some individual changes like, I see the edge of the yellow shoe already, which I do not want. So I will select the yellow card and the yellow shoe and move them slightly beyond. And I also want a little more of the green card to be visible, maybe. So I will just click on this green card and bring it a little more inside. I think this is good enough. Now in this, the basic position animation is done. The cards are moving just like they're expected to. Now along with this position change, we also know that the shoes needs to rotate a bit as well. So let's go ahead and do that now. One thing at a time. Let's look at the red shoe for now. So this is how the red shoe moves out of the frame. And while this happens, we want the red shoe, the rotation angle right now it is minus 30 degrees. And while it reaches here, we want the angle to be 0 degrees. Let's go ahead and do that now. So we'll click on red shoe and to animate rotation, the keyboard shortcut is R. Now when I press R, you'll notice it collapses everything and opens rotation. It's kind of annoying because I want to see the other things as well. And to get back the other things, you again have to press U. So it's kind of a long process. So there's another shortcut as well. So let's select the red shoe here and position is visible and I want it to keep showing position. And along with that, I want to show the rotation as well. And for that, the shortcut is Shift and R instead of only R. So I press Shift and press on R. You see what has happened? This is exactly what you wanted, right? You want to keep seeing position and you want to introduce a new thing called rotation. So I will click on rotation here while the handle is here. I'll move the handle all the way here. And while it is here, although it's out of the position, I want the rotation angle to be 0. Now if you come back and see, you'll see while it is moving, the shoe is rotating as well, right? I think that's good enough for the red shoe. Now let's have a look at the yellow shoe. This is our yellow shoe. This is our yellow shoe. Now we need to do the same thing for our yellow shoe as well. So let's have a look. This is the yellow shoe. This is the final position and this is the initial position. I will add a rotation keyframe for both of them. Again, Shift and R. It reveals the rotation. I add a keyframe here at the final position and I'll also add a keyframe here at the initial position. Now we know that the final position is just like the way we want because this is the final state. We'll have to make some changes to the initial stage. And what we are going to do here is we are going to make this angle as -90. You see, you can see the outline to understand what kind of changes has happened. And along with that, I also want to change the position a bit. Now you see there's already a position keyframe added. So whatever changes we make here is going to get saved in the same keyframe. So I don't have to add another keyframe. Of course, you cannot add 2 keyframes at a particular moment, right? So I take the yellow shoe and also just position it a little up. Now when we go ahead and play, you see what is happening? Yeah. So while the red shoe is moving out, it is rotating a bit, and while the yellow shoe is moving in, that is also rotating and coming into the vision. Great. Now we need to do the same thing while this thing is moving out as well, right? So this is where the yellow shoe moves out, and for that I need to add a rotation keyframe once again here while the handle is here. I click and add a rotation keyframe. I go to the final stage, add another rotation keyframe for the yellow shoe. Now the initial one is just like the way we wanted it. We go to the final and we'll change the rotation of this to 0, just like we did for the red shoe, if you remember. So while the yellow shoe is going out of vision, it's rotating a bit as well. Now we need to do the same thing for blue shoe. So this is the blue shoe. Now we need to add rotation keyframes here. The keyboard shortcut is Shift plus R so that I see the position as well as the rotation. I click the stopwatch to add a keyframe here. I add one to the initial stage as well. The final stage is just like the way we want. We'll change the initial stage and we will make it -90 degrees. And we'll also pull it up a bit. Even this has a position keyframe already, so the same thing gets saved here. There it is. Next, we need to animate how this card expands and forms the details page. For that, I will add another pause of 40 frames, Command Shift and the keyboard right button 4 times, and I come here. Now, there are many things which will happen in this stage. The first and foremost, this blue shape changing its shape from this rectangle to a circle. Let's go ahead and do that. For that, we will animate its size as well as the roundedness. I will click on this drop down, go to contents, go to rectangle 1, rectangle path, and this size and roundedness are the 2 things that I'm going to animate. So I add a keyframe for all of them. Now this position, ignore what this is. Let's not even get into that, right? Because it's something that you don't need to know right now. Let's move 30 frames ahead. Add another set of keyframes for size and roundedness. And while it's in the final stage, this is where I want it to look like a big circle. So we will increase the size of it really big, maybe 1600. I think 1600 should be good enough. 1600 for both height and width. And the roundedness should be around half of that so that it looks like a circle. So 800. So this is the big circle that we're talking about. And while this happens, I also want it to move up. For that, I'll have to animate position, which is not this position, by the way. This is a position which is inside rectangle. So if you do that, it's going to move with respect to the rectangle. So, you don't want to get into such complications. So we will just, we'll just animate the simple position that you have, which is nothing but this. So you already have it turned on. All that you need to do is just add one keyframe here and move 30 frames ahead and add another keyframe and move it up. And somewhat towards the right. I think this is a good position for our circle at the final stage. Yep, this looks good. And while that happens, our shoe needs to move as well. So let me bring the handle back to the initial position. This is our shoe. The position as well as the rotation is going to get changed. I move 30 frames ahead. And here, this thing is going to move up somewhere here. And the rotation is going to go back to 0 degree because I want a straight shoe here. Actually, this can move a little more up so that just a bit of the edge of the blue circle is visible. Yep, I think this part is done. Now when this happens, there are a few other things which are happening as well. So when this expands, I don't want this green card here in this vision, right? I want it to go out so as to make way for the expanded state of the blue card. So for that, I will come back to the initial stage of this, select the green card, add a position keyframe, move 30 frames ahead, and just take it out of vision. right? So that when it is increasing in size, it just quietly moves out. All right. Now let's look at this text, which is nothing but KD13, which is nothing but our blue card, this layer. Now this needs to disappear as well because we don't want the text there. And a simple way to do is to animate the opacity. But since the card is increasing, I would want it to be in a way so that it seems like this text also goes up along with the card and disappears while it's moving up or while it's increasing. So to do that, I will animate two things again. One is the position. I add a position keyframe, move 30 frames ahead, add another position keyframe, and move it up in the final, somewhere here. So if you see, go and play, this is also moving along with everything else. And along with that, I want it to disappear. So which is nothing but opacity. So let's go ahead and add an opacity keyframe. And for us to not hide position but show opacity, the keyboard shortcut should be Shift plus T. So I add a keyframe from opacity, move 30 frames ahead, and set the opacity to 0. So you see, that's going up and disappearing at the same time. Now there are just two more things. One is this UI, which is the home UI, needs to disappear, and the details UI needs to appear. And they can happen again just like using opacity. So this is the UI home. Now this is the time since I'm going to work with that. I will remove this lock. This is a UI home UI image, sorry. And I will include the UI details page image as well right above this. So that right now both of them are on top of each other, if you see. Now this is where your motion sense comes into the picture. We need to disappear one and appear the other one, which can be simply done by using opacity alone. But my motion sense kind of tells me that since this card is expanding by going up, they should appear and disappear while they are going up from their respective positions. This is what I feel, right? So let's see one thing at a time again. So let me hide the UI details page for now. I will just remove this eye icon and I stop seeing it. It's still here, but I just stop seeing it. So UI home, let us disappear it first. So for that, I feel while it disappears, it should move up. So let's add a position keyframe and let's add an opacity keyframe as well. Let's see here once again. So let's add a position keyframe, which is added. Let's add an opacity keyframe by pressing Shift and T. So this is the opacity. I add opacity keyframe, move 30 frames ahead. And in this one, I add another set of keyframes. And in the final stage, I want this UI to go up just a bit. And while it has gone up, I want it to disappear. That is, opacity is 0. So you see what is happening? While everything is going up and settling at the top, this thing is also trying to go up but disappears in the place. And in the same way, we'll make the UI details page appear as well. Right, so let's come here. I'll just put back, I'll make it visible again. So this is where it is. Now for this as well, I will add a position and an opacity keyframe. So I press P, add a position keyframe, Shift T to add an opacity keyframe, move 30 frames ahead, add another set of keyframes here. Now this time the changes will be in the initial stage, right? So this is the final stage. This is how we want it. But the initial stage, it needs to be down. So the UI details page, it needs to go down a bit and its opacity should be 0. So that when you move it, it seems like it's appearing from the bottom and it's showing up. Right? Great. Now this thing is done. Now there's just one more thing that we missed, which is nothing but the header. The header is nothing but the panel which sits here with the back icon and the favorites and search and stuff like that. So we have two images for that here. So this is header home and header details. So we'll just drag and drop and bring them here. So they appear by default at the center. So we can use this align tool. I select one of them, go to align and click on this. I select the header details and click on this, which is align to top. Now both these things are at the top here. Now while the home screen is shown, I would want the header home to be shown. And while the details screen is shown, I would want the header details page to be shown. And that can be achieved by a simple opacity animation. So I'll select both of them, press T on my keyboard, which reveals opacity. I will click on the stopwatch, move 30 frames ahead, and add another set of keyframes here. Now, I will go back to the initial stage. Now, this initial stage is where the home page is visible and the details page is not. So, the home page, the opacity of the header should be 100%, and that of the details page should be 0. Similarly, in this stage where the details page is present, the opacity of the details page header should be 100 and that of the home should be 0. That's it. You see, it's seamlessly moving from one state to another. If I just zoom out and just play the whole thing for you. It's animating and it's expanding. Now let us also quickly go ahead and collapse it as well, So after it has expanded, I want it to stay in that state for a couple of frames, maybe another 40 frames. Actually, let's make it 60 frames, another 20, right? So this is where till that I want it to hold, that is to pause. And to do that, we will just copy these keyframes and put them here, right? Command C, Command V, Command C, Command V, Command C, Command V. We do it for all of them. Now we move 30 frames ahead again. Command Shift and the right keyboard 3 times. And now we will copy these keyframes. That is the way it was before, and keep pasting them here. That is this. If I paste here, you will see as and when I copy and paste, you would see the changes going back to the state they were in before. There are a few more at the bottom, that is here. Yep, you see it's back to the way it was. Alright, we are actually done with this animation. But we know that this is very linear. Now you might be wondering what I just did, this thing got maximized. So here's another keyboard shortcut, which is very useful for people who do not have an external monitor like me. So, with more layers, it kind of gets really long. It might get difficult for you to figure out what is happening. So there is one keyboard shortcut. You can point your mouse towards any of these windows. Let's take this timeline for instance. You don't even have to click. Just point your mouse towards this and press the tilde button. That is the one which is towards the top left, right under your escape key. So when you press that, it expands that window, it expands that panel and collapses everything else so that you can work here if you want to. So this is a lot more real estate. And if you want to go back, just press tilde once again. Similarly, you can do it for every panel. If you want to expand this, just hover here, tilde, it becomes big. You want to do it for the project panel, press tilde and it expands. You want to do it for this panel, press tilde, it expands. So I find it very useful to use it for timeline because timelines can get really long. Like in this case, there are lots of stacks of stuff which has come. Cool. Now let us just go ahead and easy ease them. So these are all the keyframes that we have added. And like I have told you in the previous ones, select all of them. Select all of them. Right click on any of these keyframes. Go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. Now when you do that, it assigns some default values of easing. So it'll already start looking much better. It is much smoother than the way it was when it was linear, but it is like far from perfect. So what I prefer is to manually go ahead and tweak these values. And to do that, there's one way which I'm going to show, but before that, there is one more way as well, which is the visual way or the graphical way. Let me show you that one. So to do that, you can select any of those keyframes. You can select multiple ones as well. And you can go to this place that's called the graph editor. So once you click on graph editor, you will see something like this. You can expand this just like you can expand your timeline by pressing plus or minus. And you can change the values of the easing, which is nothing but the influence, by holding and pulling these handles. You can do it from this side or on other side, anywhere you want. Now, you will see when I do that, the value of influence changes. You can see it on that yellow tooltip which has appeared. The problem with this is you cannot measure it. right? If I bring and pull it here, it's 59.28. That's a very weird value to remember, right? So it gets really difficult if you want to keep all the things uniform. Unless, you make it 100 where it goes and snaps, every other number, it's kind of, it involves on decimal values, which is not most user-friendly. So what I prefer usually is to select it to make the changes from this velocity panel, which is right click and go to keyframe velocity, and you make the changes here. You see this value 28.51. This has appeared because we made some changes on the graph, right? So let me show you once again. Let me just select all the keyframes and undo and go back to the state where they were not eased. In this regard, there is an easier way as well, which is by using a third-party plugin, and that is called Motion 2. I'll expand it here. So this is a plugin which just makes your life easier. It doesn't do anything new. It is just a shortcut which does the same thing which you do with the graph editor or using the velocity pop-up. So let me show you how it works. If you remember, for all these initial keyframes, which is also outgoing velocity, I prefer a value of 35. So for that, this is something which determines outgoing velocity. So I put a value of around 35 and I leave it. And the moment I do, it sets that value to it. And these are another set of, final keyframes, which is nothing but incoming velocity. This is the slider for incoming velocity. And I like keeping it 75. So I will just, drag it and make it 75. And I will leave it. And it assigns 75 to it. So, whatever you are doing by going inside, clicking on these, right clicking and keyframe velocity and changing this number to 75, it's being done by this small plugin which is out here. So it's very handy. I recommend you get it. But the thing is, this is a paid plugin. But if you use After Effects very often, this is going to be a very good investment. But even if you do not want to, you can always do it the conventional way. That is, select keyframe velocity and go ahead and change the numbers here. That totally works. Similarly, let me go ahead and assign values for all of them. These are the initial set of keyframes. I'll give them 35. The final ones, 75. Similarly here, initial 35, final 75. Same at the bottom, initial 35, final 75. And the same for here as well. I will just click and drag so that I select all of them together. Initial 35 and the final 75. So this is our complete animation. Let me just go ahead and play it once. It's rendering. If you see this green thing, when it shows the green is progressing, it means that it's rendering. Once it is done, then you can go ahead and smoothly preview it. Yep. Now it is rendered. Yep. You see, that's how it's going to be. I think that looks pretty slick. It looks really good. Let me also quickly go ahead and show you how to create a dribble shot out of it. When you make a fancy parallax transition like this, it always makes a lot of sense to show that off in dribbble, right? So we know that this is not how a dribble shot looks like. This is more of a mobile frame. So let's see how we can make a dribble shot. For that, let's create a new composition. New composition inside the same project itself. We do a Command N and it opens the dialog box for a new composition, and the size of a dribble shot is usually 1600 by 1200 or anything which is 4:3. Or if you want to make it for Instagram, you can always make it square by making it 1080 by 1080 or something like that. And make sure that the frame rate is same as what you had used before. In our case, it was 60, so it can be 60, and the duration and all doesn't matter. So I'll just click ahead and click OK. So this is a comp 1 which is created. I'll put it at the beginning and I will change this to dribble shot. Let's call it my first dribble shot. Why not? And inside the dribble shot, what we will do is we'll drag and drop this composition. So I will drag and drop mobile main parallax and bring it here. Now you see this is big for it, but we'll just scale it down. And the shortcut for scale is S. While it is selected, I will press S and I will set the size to around 50%. Yeah, I think 50 works, but I would like a little more clearance at the top. So, maybe 47%. Yeah, I think 47% looks good. Now we also need a background, and the background can always be a rectangle. So I will click on this rectangle and double click. If you remember, double clicking creates a rectangle which fills the entire space. And we can give it a nice, light gray color. Something like this. And we will give a drop shadow to our shot, which is this. Let's give it a drop shadow. There are multiple ways of giving a drop shadow. One way is, you select it and go to Effect, Perspective, and Drop Shadow. When you do it, you will see this project panel kind of changes to this. It doesn't change actually. There are two tabs here. When you expand it, you will see this is your project and this is your effects control. I'm sure you would have seen the empty effects control tab here, but you never bothered to see it. That's okay, because we never used effects so far. So when you do this, this is where the effects appear. I can always select this and delete, or if you again go to Effect and go to Perspective and click on Drop Shadow, the drop shadow appears here. Now we can tweak the values of this so that it works for us. I don't want it at an angle. Maybe 180 degree is good enough, and the distance can be around 20. And I want it to be very soft, like really soft. So maybe let's try 600. Yeah, I think that's good enough, but it's a little too dark. So I'll change the opacity to around 20%. Or how about 12%? I'll make it 12%. I really want a very soft shadow around it. And if you want to see how it looks without shadow, you can do it by clicking on that FX icon here. So, it just toggles and shows you how it looks with and without the shadow. I think with shadow, it looks really good. Let's keep it this way. You know what? Let's actually make it special, because this is your first dribble shot, so it calls for something. So while it animates, while this card appears, we will also change the color of the background. Let's do that. This is our background, so I will name it background here. And to animate color, it is simple. You just go inside, you open this collapsible thing, go to Contents, Rectangle 1, Rectangle Path 1, Fill. Sorry, you don't have to go inside Rectangle Path 1. Go inside Fill and Color. Now, if you remember the way we had animated, the first 40 frames was a pause. So I just go 40 frames ahead. Now I'll add a color keyframe here. I'll click on Color, right? And this is my color keyframe. And while it is here, I want the color to be red. Actually, a slightly darker shade of the red. So I can always pick this eyedropper tool and pick it from here. And after that, make it slightly darker by pulling it this way. A slightly darker shade of this. And then in the next 30 frames, it changes to yellow. And while it is at yellow, I want the color of the background to change to yellow. And for that, in the second keyframe, I pick the eyedropper, pick the yellow color from here, make it slightly darker, click OK. Yeah. And after that, I have a pause of another 40 frames, which is nothing but this. So I add the keyframe again. I don't want any change while there is no animation. The next one is again 30 frames ahead. And in this one, I want the color to change to blue. So for that, I will add a keyframe again and change the color to blue and darken it a bit. Now this can remain because this is how our shot ends, right? If you go ahead and play, this is how it is. And we can add the same easing values for the initial keyframes. It can be 35, final 75. Okay, 75 for the initial, 35 for the final 75. Yup, that's it is. It's ready. There it collapses. It's rendered. So it's roughly around 6 seconds. So what I can do is I can trim this entire composition at 6 seconds. So while it is at 6 seconds, I can go and press the keyboard shortcut N. N will trim the composition. Now this is going to be your complete shot. That's it. Beautiful, isn't it? Enjoyed? If you like this video, like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. If you're here for the first time, I highly recommend you check out the other videos that I posted on the channel. I will keep them linked here in the info button. For now, this is Sapta. See you guys in the next one.